What's up guys, this is Mohammed, and this Sigma lens fills a hole in the Micro Four Thirds lens lineup that is quite unique. Let's take a look at the Sigma 30mm f1.4 Contemporary for the MFT mount. The Sigma 30mm f1.4 Contemporary is part of the trio of DC-DN lenses, which include the 56mm f1.4, 16mm f1.4, and of course, the 30mm f1.4. This was the first of the trio to be released back in 2016, and as such, it lacks a few things that the newer lenses have, which we will talk about. But most importantly, this lens serves a very unique role in the Micro Four Thirds lens lineup. When mounted on a Micro Four Thirds camera, the 35mm equivalent focal length is 60mm, which is a bit tighter than your normal 50, but this is the perfect compromise for the smaller sensors of MFT. Let me explain. Getting that subject separation at an effective 50mm is a hard task to achieve with the smaller Micro Four Thirds sensors. The only lens that comes close is the Olympus 25mm f1.2 because of its f1.2 aperture. The f1.8 and 1.7 offerings from Olympus and Panasonic respectively don't really give you much subject separation, especially when composing a full body shot. Therefore, the tighter focal length of the Sigma 30mm coupled with its f1.4 aperture makes it easier to achieve that subject separation and kind of makes up for the smaller sensor size of the Micro Four Thirds not being able to achieve the same level of subject separation that you would get with a full frame at an effective 50mm.
Taking a look at some of the sample images here, I tried to handpick a few that were full body shots. And as you can see, you can achieve very good subject separation on a full body shot, which is kind of difficult to do with Micro Four Thirds sensors. Taking a closer look at the focus fall-off, it's very smooth and not at all intrusive. Distinct subject separation on full body shots was kind of hard to do before. I had to use my Sigma 50-100 mounted on a speed booster set it at f1.3, then take quite a lot of steps back, and at that point I could get that subject separation, but those look like very compressed telephoto photos. The feel is very different. The photos that you can get from the Sigma 30mm doesn't look as compressed and as telephoto-y as the ones you can get with the 50-100. So while you get that subject separations, the photos don't seem distant. There's a presence in there. It doesn't look like you're standing 15 to 20 meters away from your subject. That's what I mean by presence. The subject seems close to the camera, but there's also subject separation to not let the background distract from the actual subject.
I'm a big fan of odd focal lengths, and the fact that this lens can give you very full-frame looking images makes it very near and dear to me ever since getting it a couple of weeks ago. Speaking of dear, let's talk image quality. Sigma lenses are famous for their excellent sharpness, and this lens is no exception. It is sharp right from the get-go at f1.4. The corners, however, can improve when stopped down to f1.8 and f2.8. Since this lens was primarily bought for my wife who does wedding photography, chromatic aberration and white wedding dresses are a match made, well, not in heaven.
This is shot at f1.6, and taking a closer look, you can see some chromatic aberration in the reflections coming from the jewels on the ring. Same story here, this picture is shot at f1.6, and the shiny surface of the shoes contain a lot of chromatic aberration. But stopping down to f2.8 eradicates almost all of the chromatic aberration. Even though there is a white bright dress in this picture, there are no signs of chromatic aberrations anywhere.
This is an issue that does exist with this lens, and stopping down is the only way to really get rid of it. Yes, chromatic aberration is easy to fix in post. However, in some cases, when it appears along the edges of skin or hair, removing that chromatic aberration causes the color of that skin or hair to disappear as well. Let's move on to build quality. Even though this is not an art series lens, its build quality feels much closer to that of much more expensive Sigma lenses. A nice and smooth focus ring, along with a very solid build, makes this lens feel very premium in the hand. However, I mentioned in the opening that this was the first of the trio of DC-DN lenses to be released, and as such it lacks a few things that those lenses have. First among those is weather sealing, and this lens is not weather sealed. However, we had a wedding shoot about a month ago and it was just pouring down that day. And I primarily shoot with the Sigma 18-35 and 50-100, both of which are not weather sealed. And I was worried that water is going to get inside and possibly cause some malfunction. And those lenses got soaked that day. I mean, I was trying my best to cover them, but there was heavy rain that day that never stopped. But they held up great. There was no damage done to the lenses and they're still performing excellently to this day. So based on that experience, I feel a bit more comfortable shooting with Sigma lenses that are not considered as weather sealed in harsher conditions. But your mileage may vary. Secondly, and this is a very minor issue, but this is a very standard plastic lens hood that I feel like doesn't attach to the lens tightly enough. When you're trying to dismount the lens from the camera and you hold the lens by the lens hood and rotate it, the lens hood will come off first. And lastly, autofocus. Autofocus is a very tricky subject to talk about with Panasonic cameras and third-party lenses.
Okay.
However, I'm happy to say that the autofocus of the Sigma 30mm f1.4 is snappy and quick. It does miss at times, but it's accurate more often than not.
Let's take a look at these example shots here. I asked Zahra to come towards the camera and I took 13 pictures with the Panasonic G9. And out of those 13 pictures, only 3 were not in focus. That's a respectable performance for a third-party lens on Panasonic Micro Four Thirds cameras, especially since all of these pictures are shot at f1.4.
You may notice that native Panasonic lenses might be faster because they can take advantage of the DFD system, but it's not a night and day difference. It can't quite keep up with the 20 frames per second burst mode of the G9, but overall, I'm pleased with its autofocus performance. So overall, I quite like this lens. Like I said in the beginning, it fills a void in the Micro Four Thirds lens lineup. For $300, it performs well. It's quite sharp, is built well aside from the quirks with the lens hood and the lack of weather sealing, and autofocus is fast. But most importantly, the look that you can achieve with this lens and the images that you can capture are quite pleasant. And that, in my book, makes this lens a winner. So that's it for this review, guys. I hope you liked it and found it informative. Please leave a like on this video, let us know what you think in the comments, go back and watch all my other videos, and subscribe to my channel. Till next time.